Now the next step on, and I thought I'd just do this in two pieces, one to sand out and one to buffing. I started sanding this out because I wanted to find out if these parts are ready to be sanded yet. It's 24 hours since I sprayed it. Now what happens is in cold weather, it sometimes takes a lot longer. And I've seen it where even 2 or 3 days later, the paint is too soft to wet sand out. But the test is, you can do it very quickly. You can pick any spot on this, and it doesn't really matter where. Once you know, 2500 sandpaper really doesn't remove a lot of material. It flattens the area. And that's the key here. We want to get this flat before we see if the buffing... Now, the sanding will either be a little bit harder if the paint is soft, a little bit more difficult, time consuming. But before I do anything, this part has to be dull and flat. No shiny spots. If I had a run on it, now see, here's a good example. What I'm trying to show with this, the shiny spot right here, well, it'll buff out a lot nicer if I get rid of all of the shiny spots. I get in all these little nooks and crannies. A part like this, believe it or not, takes a lot of time because it's a lot of corners and edges and angles and little spots I'm looking for along the edge. But if you buff out a part that hasn't been flattened out with 2500 paper, and I know a lot of people are intimidated by 2500 paper. They go, well, I'm not sanding. If I use 400, it'll sand right down. It sure will, but you'll have forever to get the scratches out. Now the nice thing, 2500 paper leaves such small scratches that they almost always come right out. No matter how soft the paint is. In this case, it's only, well, we painted it yesterday. So now, it's good to keep in mind, if this were summer, 70, 80 degree temperature, I've done this, painted in the morning and done this late in the afternoon. Had the part in an 80 degree garage. Well, in the winter, I always think it's good to leave it even an extra day. But there's always a time at which it just seems to sand out beautifully. And it looks like we've got that time right now. Now, I don't know if it's going to buff out beautifully, because a lot of this part I'm going to have to do by hand. I'm not going to be able to get a machine in here. But we'll find out. And it used to be years ago, well, not years ago, forever, that a lot of parts you have to buff by hand. There's just no machine that can get in there, no matter how many tools you make. But anyway, the basic rule of engagement here is the paint has to be dry before you do this. And I haven't ever found, like an hour later you could do this. It usually takes 24 hours, almost always. If in doubt, let it dry. The other test is you take your fingerprint. If you leave a fingerprint, let me just show this, even though I have a glove on. If I go like that and it leaves a fingerprint that doesn't wipe off, not ready. Let it dry some more. And anybody that's ever, painted anything, when you're painting something, patience is a virtue. It really, well, life, it's a virtue too. But if I can show this, and once I get to the point of buffing, maybe sometime later today, I tried to show everything that we've been doing in step by step by step. So for somebody who really wants to go back and do this, and my old airplane videos were done in step by step, and some of them had almost 100 steps. But at the end, you knew everything. Or you knew everything that I know, which you can be the judge of whether that's worthwhile or not. Okay, now we still have, and as fussy as I am, see that little shiny spot up there? That, well, is just, there's no, if you can fold the paper over and over and over, make that little radius, there's no substitute for just being fussy. Now it'll be interesting because next week, hopefully Glenn will be able to get over here and we'll work on his track bike for a while. Saturday, we're hoping to have a little overhauling session. We'll find out. And most of the people that subscribe to my channel anyway, they follow it step by step for whatever reason, whether they're just entertained by it or they can't find a delete button. I'm never quite sure of that. Hey, and by the way, yesterday when I was showing Karen some things about YouTube and different channels, we looked up Stacy Rose, Stacie space ROSE. That happens to be my daughter, and she's got her own channel with music. And now, if this has a kind of a muted, dull, I don't know how to explain it. You have to see it in real life. That to me, when it's like that, it's usually ready for buffing. We're going to find out in about 20 minutes. I'll do the other part off camera.